And in this webinar, we are going to run through as quickly as we can in the period of time that we have QMS, or quality management system, and cover the concepts, but then also get into Steelhead and how it actually works in Steelhead, how it's integrated with the rest of the platform. So real quickly on the agenda, what is QMS? Just the high-level basics. Why is QMS important? Why do we care about it? Why do we use it? Just to be quite frank, I mean, there's people that use Steelhead that don't use QMS, even though they have it, right? So it really is a leadership decision that it's important for our company, and we need to use it. So that's what we'd like to cover today, is get into some of the nuts and bolts of why it's important, how it works, and get into a specific demo so we can walk away with an understanding of how to use it. Then also covering typical workflows. Obviously, this is all centered around the metal finishing space. So processing parts, other customers' parts, in the coding environment. And then we'll go through a demonstration, which will be probably the lion's share of the time. And then we'll leave time for discussion and questions at the end. So very briefly, what is QMS? It's essentially policies, procedures, processes, and tools that to meet the quality requirements for the customer, or standards. It's essentially a suite of systems, processes, and tools that you use to ensure that you have quality. Basically, quality doesn't happen on accident. It takes a lot of proactive energy, time, effort from people, from tools like software, physical equipment, document control, suppliers, trainers. It's really the entire puzzle coming together in one kind of orchestra to create high quality parts. And again, the biggest thing is that it just does not happen on purpose, and it takes energy and effort, and you have to have systems in place, and you need to drive essentially compliance with those systems. It's not really a space for kind of creativity and making things up on the fly. It's a space where discipline and rigor and systems and controls really wins the day. So that's what we'll get into. Typical workflows. I must be missing a slide here. Sorry, give me 1 minute. Okay, apologies. I'm not sure what happened to one of my slides. I had a slide on why QMS is important here. I'll just cover it verbally. But obviously, if you have poor quality, a lot of things go sideways. Your reputation begins to suffer. Morale at the team could suffer, but it'll hit you in the bottom line really quickly as well. If you consider, if you're a 20% margin shop and you process a part and you have to process it twice, you've not only had to spend, let's say it was $100 was what you had to spend to earn that 20, you now had to spend $200 to earn that 20. So you're in the hole by $100, and then you need to run another 5 parts just to catch up. So you had to run it twice to start with, plus another 5. So plus all the opportunity cost. So it adds up really, really quickly. Rework is, obviously your customers don't pay you to rework and fix your own mistakes. So the cost of rework can swell really, really quickly and really drive down the bottom line. Also, reputation, brand, customer loyalty, and then a lot of our customers work in oil and gas or in aerospace, and commercial incentives and making money aside. A lot of these parts are really critical for safety to the end user. We all saw Boeing in the news a couple times recently, and they're not good headlines. And a lot of that's around quality, where parts are making it out into the wild, and people's, frankly, lives are endangered, or the environment, or other kind of not great failure modes. So it does extend beyond the commercial, but there is also a pretty heavy commercial impact with poor quality. So I'll just jump straight into the Steelhead platform here. And just a 30-second introduction for those who've never seen Steelhead. It's a cloud-based operating system for the finishing space, specifically job shops. So what Steelhead's really set up for is shops that take in customers' parts, process those parts, and give them back to the customer. So the rework workflows that we can see, it might be as simple as I'm processing the parts, and whether it's a paint or coating process, and they come out and they're not thick enough, so I just put them back at the beginning of the process and run them again, or put them through the process again. That's like probably the simplest form of rework. We might have to take them to an external work order where we have to strip the parts or blast the parts and then reintroduce them back into the workflow. Again, still might be internal, never escaped our 4 walls. But then we also might have an escape where we process the parts, send it to the customer detects it, sends it back to us, and then I guess we could either strip the parts or reprocess the parts. A number of different workflows there. So we need to be robust to all of that functionally. Like, it has to be intuitive and useful for everyone to use. And we want to stay true to remaining fully digital. And then also we want to be sure we're tracking costs. That cost of quality is super important. So just going to jump into a very basic order that I've created. It's just for this demo here. And basically it's 4 steps. We're going to prep the parts, we're going to process parts, we're going to cure them, and then we're going to inspect them. So we'll just represent normal production here. We're stepping through, and obviously operator instructions, spec collections, a lot of things are going to be happening here. But this is a highly simplified demo just to cover what would happen with the QMS side. So let's say we process parts all the way through, and then we end up in inspect. So I'm a quality manager. I'm inspecting, and I find something wrong with the parts. So I can go ahead and work these parts here. And let's say out of these 20 parts, I determine that 10 need to go on quality hold for some reason. So I can just say, all right, 10 of those parts, I need to put those on quality hold. That's typically where we kind of detect quality, is somewhere out in the floor in process inspection or something somewhere else, like an inspection node. So we can put in a description here. And we can also formulate inputs as well. And this is custom. We can ask as many questions as we want, and kind of format what kind of data we want to collect there. Also, what we might do out in the plant floor is grab an image. I'm on a computer here, but this is something you could do on a tablet or otherwise. And you might grab an image of that part, and then even take a quick pen, mark it up wherever the issue is, and then we can go ahead and upload that to the file as well. So now we've created a hold event on those parts right during the workflow, and we've added some extra information there so that the quality team is able to see that. So here you can see we have 10 parts that are on hold and 10 parts that are being processed normally. So if we want to, we can actually take these parts and process them independently of the parts on hold. It's not actually a requirement that we, in this case, that go to shipping, so we can go ahead and move those. So it's not a requirement that we keep all the parts on hold, but of course we may make that decision. So you'll notice that I put parts on hold, but depending on my permissions, I may not be able to take them off of hold depending on how we have our quality management system set up. So going back to, and this is a tile right on the Steelhead homepage called quality management. And, we started with the general workflow out on the floor, what the folks working on parts see. But then the quality management side, this is the team that's actually doing our quality management. We can see these parts are here, put on hold, and ready for us to take action. Of course, like a lot of dashboards in Steelhead, we can filter by part number, customer, work order, etc., depending on how we're working at that time. So we have these Boeing parts here, and again, I don't know anything about this order. I haven't seen it being entered. I don't know who processed it. And now I have some options. I can either work parts or create an NCR or remove the hold. So first, I'm probably going to work the parts just to gather some more information, and I can see, all the inputs that we have. The parts showed up broken, or we broke them. I can see the images. I can see work order comments, things of that nature. And then from here, I can either remove the hold. So if there's nothing wrong with the parts, I'm able to do that right from the screen, or I could do it here as well. So remove hold. Let's say 3 of these parts are good, and we want to put them back into production. So I could just do a hold exit. So we actually have some options here. A hold exit will just release them back to the processing so that the folks in the floor can continue working them through and release them to the customer. We can rework the parts, which provide us an option on how to reintroduce the same work order or create a new work order that has a separate process and that we reintroduce back to, which I can show. Or perhaps we might transfer to shipping. So let's say, I'll just do a couple of these. So let's say one of the parts was bad, and the customer, we're going to send them back to the customer. So we can just remove the hold and say ready for shipping, and we'll go ahead and save. And now that part is out of QMS. We're now at 9 out of 20, and that part's ready to be sent back to the customer. If it's a high value part that they want to take back and reprocess, if we just want to hold and exit, maybe I'll do that with another 1 part. we can just go ahead and click save. And now the plant floor will be able to take that particular part and just process it through. It's been released by the quality team. And every step that I take is also being tracked as far as who did it, what happened. And then also one thing we might do is, after we have a part on hold, is create an NCR. So a part of the, what is QMS? It's the policies, the procedures, the tools that we use to manage our quality. And a part of that is the documentation. So in this case, we're going to create a non-conformance report. And we have various input sections here, and this is all configurable per your own plant. So this is really where creating policy comes in, where we can create a reason, and we can have standardized drop-down menus to really, let's see, I'll just do scrap, department, what's the production, lot number. So whatever key information that you want to track for your quality management plan, we can go ahead and collect this information and kind of configure how we collect that. Again, attach files as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create an NCR there. Non-conformance report. So now that I have this created, I have, again, those same options to remove the hold, rework the parts, do whatever I want to do, but I can also email this NCR straight to the customer. So it might be that the customer, we want the customer to participate in this process, where we want them to comment. So we can say, attach that NCR file. It'll attach the file, or attach related files, whether it's the work order, purchase order, things like that. And then we can grab who we want to send this email to from the organization. And then we can go ahead and send a non-conformance. And then just a quick peek at that PDF. Just like all the PDFs in Steelhead, it's completely configurable. So we can set this up to represent how we want our NCRs to be, and fill out all the forms that are applicable for us. So the idea is to not only just meet the kind of paperwork needs, but also to actually improve our quality through following these processes and making them really easy, and tying them to production and getting them the information they need to run that production. So I'll go ahead and send that to the customer, and we can see that we have an email sent to that customer. And the customer might email back and say they're good, or reprocess them, or rework. So let's say we want to go ahead and rework these parts. Let's just rework 3 of them. So once we choose to rework the parts, as we mentioned kind of earlier, this is another fork in the road, because we might choose to just send it back to the same work order, which in this case is work order number 3213, and you can see it defaults to that actually. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with some of these parts. I'll say I'm just going to send 3 of these parts back to prep, and I can change location, things like that. But and I'll just say reprocess and rework category as well. We can start filling out some information for some attribution, and then we can go ahead and click save. So that's created a rework transfer type, so it's documented that happened, and you can see that 3 have been released. So again, full traceability on all of this. So the remaining 5 parts here, we can go ahead and remove hold a different way, or maybe I'll just do it with one part, and we can do rework here. And then we can either grab an existing work order if we create a different work order, or we can create a new work order, and it defaults to populate it with the same work order number dash rework. And this is the name. The work order numbers are actually serialized in the background with unique IDs, but the name in this case will still connect the regular work order number and then the rework as well. The reason why we do that is when you're searching for the original work order number, you get both that pop up right away. And then it's also really important to note that all of the costs incurred, so all the job costing that happens in Steelhead, whether parts are occupying station or incurring labor costs or depleting inventory, so the cost of reworking those parts on these kind of spur work orders, or if they go through the same work order twice, we're actually incurring that cost again. So what we talked about earlier about the importance of quality, when you do have rework that you're handling, we do want to be running up a tab. We want to be running up a bill. We want to really measure how much it's costing us to be reworking those parts. So we're going to create a new work order. We can, of course, add in our labels, whatever we need to, and add notes. And let's see here. So it's a rework work order type. So we can either use the current recipe that we have on that existing work order. This is my simplistic one, or we can select a new process. So if we have a separate, see if we have a rework order here or strip. All right, I'll just grab a random process here, and then we'll just go ahead and save and configure that. So I might be grabbing like a strip process or whatever it may be, or maybe it's all my reworks, and I can either do include or exclude, so it's super flexible. So I can say, I actually want to just I want to grind these parts and then, rack them, and that's it. And then after that's done, I want to have these parts go back to the original work order for reprocessing. So I can go ahead and click save. Or I might have different processes for each rework type, so you just select the whole process or specific nodes. And then we're going to go ahead and release this to that new work order. And you can see, again, that one's tracked as well. So perhaps we can jump back to this work order real quick and show what that looks like, just to kind of dive into the details on kind of workflow integration. So you can see these are all the parts that we've been kind of stepping around. And you can see that these parts are still on quality hold that we step into shipping, but you can still ship them and invoice them. But this is really designed for when we want the part numbers to show up on the shipping and invoicing documentation with the fact that they had a quality issue versus just reworking internally, and then the customers just got the parts to spec. So there's a lot going on here, but we're really flexing this tool to do everything that it can in this masterclass here. But if I go back to the received order, we can see I have my original work order, but I also have my rework work order that I created on the fly. And if I go into this rework, we can start processing these parts. And you can see the very simple steps that we have in this particular case. And again, this would be fully integrated to all the work boards, all the stations, all the transfers. So all of that configuration we've done in our Steelhead domain on how work flows through our plants. When we take apart and rework it, whether it's through the same work order or the same recipe or into a new recipe or a new process, it's still riding on the same infrastructure as the rest of the parts. So it'll flow through production relatively easily and transparently. So let's say I'm doing the strip process and I finish, let's see, I have a question here. And I finished doing my work on this one. So you can see in this very brief demonstration process, it actually says finish rework at the end. So I can't complete the parts, I can't ship the parts, I can only finish the rework. And from there, I can go ahead and it's a rework done transfer type. So again, it's all about just very deep traceability of who did what happened. And again, you saw the labor timers going there, incurring all of the costs that we want to be tracking. So now it's actually going to send it back to that kind of mother work order that we started on by default. And we can send it back to prep or process, or here in this case, we're just going to send it back to process. And we go ahead and click move. And now this work order is complete. But it's important to note that when we're looking at our margins on this particular purchase order, the costs from this rework order are being incurred without the price being double counted. So in this case, we add another $4.74 of cost, and without adding any more revenue from that. So we talked about some of the economic impact of doing rework. We definitely want to capture that while it's transparent to the workflow out on the floor. So back to the work order, you can see we have the 3 control rod parts over at prep. And then if I scroll down to and then they can be processed obviously normally. And then if I go to all part transfers, we can see full traceability of everything that happened. Rework done, rework, where to come from, where to go to, from work order to work order, who did it, when, etc. So really deep granularity as far as what happened to those parts as they deviate from the normal production process, and then also keeping everything streamlined and easy, and the interface is identical to what people are used to using. So that way it's not, okay, well, you process parts on one way, but okay, since that's a rework, you now have to use this very kind of arduous and unique process to process those parts. It's the same screen, it's the same training, it's the same everything. So for the folks out on the floor, it'll be transparent to them. So jumping back into quality management, we kind of covered what happens through a normal workflow, detecting a problem, documenting the problem, putting parts on hold, bringing it to the attention of the quality management team, and then the quality management team taking care of those parts, whether they're shipping them back to the customer. We also didn't show, I guess, scrap. So let's say this customer calls and says, hey, we were holding those and moving them to shipping. We just want to go ahead and exit those parts. Customer said to toss them. So in this case, we'll document the fact that the customer told us to toss those parts out. They drop off the screen. They drop off the work order. They don't show up in shipping. They don't show up in invoicing, and they're not going to show up on anyone's screen. But we have that traceability for all time that is what happened. So I guess getting back into the QMS side and the quality management dashboard with the NCRs, we had created that NCR, and of course we can take all of these actions back into the workflow that we had discussed. But we can go ahead and edit that NCR. We can create a corrective action or send it to the customer. We've already shown that we can send that to the customer. But after we send it to the customer, we might choose to create a corrective action report. So this is another important document in the quality management portfolio. And, this is about fixing things so that they don't happen again, right? Instead of just saying, hey, we had a quality issue because the oven temperature was too high, and then just doing that 100 times over, we're actually going to take corrective action to make sure it doesn't happen. And much like the NCR form, we have the ability to build out completely custom workflows here. So again, this is tailored to your specific quality policy that your quality management team generates for your business. We work with you to build this out to match your exact data capture needs. So in this case, we'll say it's a processing error, investigation, who was it, initial response date, etc. And a lot of this documentation is actually required by regulation from ISO and other regulatory accreditations. And we'll say following, reporting problem, root cause. You can type this all out. Corrective action input section. We may have codes, which is going to be really important for kind of bucketing and binning. So not only we want to track cost of quality, but we want to do attribution as granular as we can without driving too much effort, where we're seeing are these quality issues coming from and what's driving that cost, whether it's down to an operator. I guess that's the other thing I haven't touched on yet, and this is probably a good point to make a few comments on it. With quality in manufacturing, yes, we want to have high quality to keep our price down, and yes, we need to create documentation to document things, and we don't want to lose parts. We want intuitive workflows. We want to communicate to our customers, establish trust, but we also want to improve our quality. And the more information we have to improve our quality, that's actionable information for our quality manager, because if our quality manager just knows that we have quality issues, but I don't know what, then it's very difficult to go start training operators or invest in new equipment or maybe get a new chemical supplier. So by having that backwards traceability, we can track what stations, what equipment's generating quality issues, what operators, what shift, things of that nature. So it's really about an intuitive workflow so that you have an effective quality management system in the first place without being burdensome and high effort for the team to use, but then having the ability and the insights to go back and dig through that data and make decisions to correct it going forward. And corrective action reports are a part of this. So I'll just grab a person and I'll leave the rest blank just so I'm not typing here. And I'll go ahead and click save. So now we have a corrective action report created. So I can either edit that CAR or close that CAR. I can also see all quality holds that we have. And this is essentially a dashboard. All of the parts that are on hold, like for example, if I want to see all CARs, I can see all the open CARs or closed CARs. So there's a pretty intuitive workflow here for our quality management team. And as we're working through the CAR, we're completing our investigation, attaching files, taking pictures, documenting, whatever it may be. We can go ahead and close that investigation and also close the CAR. So again, meeting our regulatory requirements, but also setting up tools for our team to actually fix our quality without too much effort or burden. And then, of course, in the close RMAs, or let's see, where was I? CARs rather. The closed CARs, we'll see the CAR that we just created, but it's the same for RMAs and NCRs. And I'll jump into RMAs shortly here as well. Quality hold, active, resolved, and filtering as well. So just like we like to find parts really quickly in Steelhead using things like our global search, we want to dig through all of our quality data really quickly and understand what's going on. So if we want to go look for a certain customer, we can apply that search filter and go through our quality data and go find all quality holds that we either have active or resolved for that customer. And of course, everything's hyperlinked back to work orders, transfers, stations, comments, etc. So I'm going to jump back to the quality management dashboard, and you can see our CAR number 17 is now gone because it's been closed. So these are our open CARs. So there are instances where we send parts, and this is kind of the most regrettable one. This is the one that not only costs us dollars, but also costs us reputation, and unfortunately does bring into concern the safety issue, right? If look at that Boeing story where the door flew off, right? Of course, it was an OEM issue, but still, that's a release outside of the factory. And in those instances, we do want to document, we want to facilitate that workflow. So if I'm doing an RMA, I can go ahead and say I want to add parts to be returned. So I can start by grabbing a customer, and you can see it starts to filter down all part numbers that we've sent. So I can go a step further and go by received order, and that'll shorten the list down by work order, down by part number, and eventually I'll narrow it down to a line item. Say like, okay, I've isolated these are the parts that we sent to you last February that you found issue with, and we are going to issue an RMA here, but we're just going to do it for 3 out of those 10 parts that were there. Return reason. I don't think people really type our fault, but we'll go ahead and admit fault here, and we can go ahead and say it was a finishing defective there. We can attach files as well. So if they sent an email, they sent a PDF, anything that we want to document that, create that paper trail, we just click and drag right off our computer or take photos and populate that information as well. And of course, this section here is configurable, so we can add as many inputs as we want in a variety of ways. So I go ahead and click save here. So I've now created this RMA. The status is that it's awaiting return. Of course, we can edit that RMA, we can send it to the customer, or we can close that RMA, or rework or put the parts on hold. But typically we're going to start by sending that to the customer. So your typical email interface, leave a message, look at our PDF, include emails, add extra emails, send that email to the customer if they require that RMA. And then again, if we want to rework or put these parts on hold, we can go ahead and rework these parts. So this part is, we actually have an outstanding RMA here, so we can either come into, when the parts do return, so this part number 3434 rotor, we can either introduce a hold entrance here and enter the parts back into workflow, or so a hold entrance will actually introduce them back to the original work order. Chances are that work order is done and closed if the parts are coming back from the customer, in which case we'd kick it over to a rework, in which case we can create new work orders or grab processes and do the node selection, that whole thing that we've already covered there. But I do want to take a step back out and cover what's a more likely workflow instead of coming, because you don't receive parts through QMS, you receive them through receiving. So if I just remember that part number 3434 rotor, and I go back to our Steelhead dashboard, and we look at our receiving, and this is where we're going to be receiving either purchase order items or parts. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and receive customer parts. And so if I'm just running the shipping doc, I don't know that these are RMA parts, but I do 3434 rotor. You'll see that I get a notification, part 3434 rotor has an open RMA. Make sure to contact a quality manager to ensure that these parts are not associated with RMA 17. So right here, we can either save this with warnings, or we can jump right back over to that screen, and we can remediate that through the the QMS dashboard and reintroduce that back into the workflow per the instructions of the quality management team. So that's really the high level. I think we can jump over to questions for the last 10 or so minutes here. But just in summary, I think everyone really understands the value of quality and the importance of quality. And from a technology provider standpoint on our side, just, our philosophy is to do what it takes to make your business successful and do what it takes to make your business more money at the end of the day. And how we do that in the QMS space is by having a tool that not only meets the needs of your QMS processes and tools to actually improve that quality and implement a good, robust portfolio of solutions, but also to integrate it very deeply and intuitively into the other Steelhead tools you use today, such as workflow management, operator instruction, job costing, receiving, email interaction to customers. So that's really what I hoped to cover today on the demonstration, was going into detail on not only the functionality of the QMS itself, but the level of integration. And the last comment on that, the reason why we value integration so heavily is if you have one software for receiving, one software for workflow, one software for QMS, another for inventory, the amount of friction between each tool or each point solution is extremely high. And that's why we've chosen to invest so heavily in the QMS space, because we found, you saw every time I jumped from QMS to production, they're technically different tools, but you see all the blue hyperlinks of part numbers and work orders, and the interconnectivity is very, very high. So that creates a data-rich environment where the QMS team can actually, or the quality team can do their job with the right data from production, but also it facilitates super, super efficient workflows that are intuitive for everyone to use, which encourages high adoption of the tool, higher integrity of the data, lower cost of operating your system, lower overhead for your plant. So that's really what we're trying to do. Of course, we can't actually increase your quality through software, right? The software your quality has to be improved directly through the intelligence and the efforts of your team and the training and the folks out in the floor coming to work and caring every day. But what we can do is kind of help you get out of your own way and provide tools that are efficient to use, that allow you to do your job. So that's really what we're trying to do with QMS. All right, so we have a few questions. I'll start at the top. Traceability when we're splitting up an order. How are you maintaining traceability when you split the order up? Is there a new tag made to account to the one piece that was separated? So that's a great question. When we split up the order, what happens for traceability? If I jump into that work order there, you can see that we have parts split. But as far as traceability, we can traceability as granular as we want, frankly. The most extreme example is serializing every single part. So if we have 10 parts or 100 parts, we can serialize each part number. And in that case, it's like its own identity. Each part is, and you can move them obviously in a blob, so that's efficient to move them. But if you take one serial number and rework that or process that differently, we will have that traceability that one specific serial number was processed separately. It's very common in the finishing space not to track every single VIN number, in which case we're tracking lot numbers or group numbers or work order numbers or things like that. But we can absolutely track, what parts went through what node and kind of look backwards on that even after you've separated the parts. Giancarlo, if I understood correctly, the rework order number is the previous work order number dash rework, essentially creating a new work order. That's correct, Giancarlo. In that particular instance, that's just the name of the rework order. You can change it to whatever you want, but the default is that we grab the work order name of the original work order and then do dash rework at the end of it, so that again, so it's going to be on the same PO or RO, so it'll be grouped automatically and linked automatically. But just when you go to search, like in global search or something like that, you can very clearly tell what's related there. But again, that separate work order we don't have to create a separate work order, but if we do, it will have its own background ID in the Steelhead platform, and then the name is kind of just what you see in the front. Charles with the question: when emailing an NCR to the customer, are they able to provide feedback, approve an exception, etc., directly in Steelhead, or would it be a manual action to copy paste their response from email into Steelhead? Great question, Charles. So today in Steelhead, you can email customers out of Steelhead using either our email, I think it's updates@gosteelhead.com or something like that, or you can actually use SMTP, I believe it's called, where your email, so charles@abc.com, your emails can come from that email. But in either case, whether you're using our updates into our system, when they respond, that email would go back to your email because that's your email that you logged into Steelhead on. So today the response is not, we don't have two-way inbox back into Steelhead, so that's why we allow the attached file there. But that's an interesting idea, but today it is a one-way. So Eric, when I search a part number in the global search, will I be able to see any associated NCRs, CARs associated with that part number? Great question, Eric. So if we go to, let's see, what's our part number? It was control rod. So if I just click on this part number here, I'm now on the part number page, and I can now see, all of the related processes, information, files, and then we should have our NCRs, quality holds, all available right here as well. So we can jump straight over and say our quality holds that have that, and it'll jump over to this menu, pre-filtered, and again, we can just find that right through the search as well. I don't know if we added these links here. Yes, we don't have them added exactly right here, so we're going to have to ask you for another click to get to this screen here until we get it added to that. It's kind of drop down links, but absolutely, you can find it in just a click there. Is there a follow-up / effectiveness section within the CAR format? That is a good question. I think we can add in sections as we're going to have to follow up on that one. Let me go check. This is on the CAR format. Follow-up effectiveness, corrective action, input. I'm not sure if we can add an extra section here. We'll have to follow up on that question, Erich. We'll get an answer back to you on that particular one. But I believe you should be able to add in a section there. But I think we have about 5 right now. Marino, are there any insights reporting tools planned or in place for QMS? Fantastic question, Marino. As many of you may know that are following Steelhead product updates, we have actually 2 engineers working on a tool we're really excited about called Insights, which are native reports that have a very high degree of functionality and very fast and load quickly. So for example, like invoicing, I want to see revenue per customer all time, or deliveries, which has some ISO related things as well, like on-time delivery. And really providing us, we don't have it in production yet. It's, but you can drill down. Let's see if this one's all time. Okay, yeah, we're waiting on a couple of releases here. I know we've have them in QA right now, but to answer your question, Marino, absolutely. Insights, we're on track to. I think we're planning for at least 15 more reports by the end of this quarter, and quality is going to be a huge part of that. We want to be able to really quickly track quality per station, by customer, cost, quality, things like that. So it's a very good fit, and as you can tell, the QMS and the workflow are highly native and integrated. So that's really a prime candidate for insight reports. So if you have any specific suggestions, we're always welcome to hear those. But the short answer is yes. Insights and QMS are going to be a really high value synergy between those 2 tools. Jose, can floor personnel create NCR as a tool only for QMS? or designee? So that's a great question. So there's pretty detailed user permissions. So if I dive into the permissions for a customer, I can track which type of transfers they're able to do. So I can allow them to put parts on hold. Like, for example, transferring, we don't want people to scrap parts or rework the parts or transfer them without permission. So we can allow them to do things like transfer parts or put parts on hold, but then QMS would be a separate permission. So if we elect to, for that particular user, we can block them from doing any of the features that are in the QMS platform and just keep that very simple. They put it on hold and kind of put their hand up and wait for the QMS team to come, or the quality team to come in and address that. So it's kind of as designed for your plant. George is asking, if you have a batch of 20 and 10 are reworked, how many SN numbers? How will SN numbers be tracked when split? So I believe that's serial numbers. So George, I'm going to go ahead and create an order here and demonstrate that really quickly. Oops, let's do our same customer. Going. And we'll say this is an ad cap job. So you can do part customer inputs here and just show off a tool along the way. And it'll actually, oh, let me add parts. Control, wrong. So I'll add in 4 parts here. So the question is around serialization and traceability, and I'll just have them go straight to prep. So I've just created my order there. And you'll see that this label got added automatically. That's because we had a custom input there. So just a quick plug on labels, we can create labels automatically based on various rules, looking at a lot of different data. But in this case, we're looking at serialization, which in hindsight, we could have serialized as we were creating those parts there. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and group for serialize. So I'm going to choose to serialize, and I'm going to add some outputs here. Well, I guess we don't want to serialize ourselves. So let's say we're using the customer's serial number. That's one, another, another, and then maybe only 2 are serialized for some strange reason. I can just go ahead and click save. And you can see that we have these parts, but we only had 2 total. You can see that the parts are now split here by serial number. So if I move one part, it's going to be independent of the next part. So in your case, if we had a batch of 20 and 10 are reworked, how will the serial numbers be tracked? You can see that the numbers are actually kind of quarantined off and segregated by that serial number through the part transfer, as I'm showing here. And the part transfers are really the backbone of the QMS system. So if you transfer parts through QMS as well, we'll still be tracking it the same way. So here you have the serialization number there. So once you serialize down to the part number, it's a pretty hard, that's as granular as you can get, and that's a pretty hard definition, and that really segregates the part. But if you say I have 100 parts and they're kind of a blob of parts, we kind of Steelhead reacts to the level of specificity that the customer desires. So if you want to just process parts as a blob of 1,000 parts, it works well for that. But if you want to drive it down to each part number being specifically tracked for firearms or something like that, we're able to do that as well. All right, so that's what we have for questions today. We are at the 45-minute mark, and I do want to respect everyone's time here. I don't know if you were eating lunch during this, but appreciate all the questions and the participation. We got a great crowd here, and please do continue to keep the feedback coming. If you're a Steelhead customer and using it, and if you're considering the tool, feel free to reach out with questions. And we're always very excited to continue working with all our industry partners, and we'll all keep upwards and onwards. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.